This is the story of Cain and Abel. When God created the world, God made human beings different from other creatures. Human beings were made in the image of God, so they could reflect God's nature. How we reflect God's nature is a mystery, but the teaching of our faith tells us that we reflect God's nature best when we treat each other with kindness and when we act in fairness toward one another. And when we do this, we honor the image of God in other people. The Bible tells us a story of what happens when we choose not to honor the image of God in others. It all started when God made human beings and placed them in a beautiful garden that was full of trees and plants and other animals. God told the humans that they could eat from any tree in the garden, but there were two that they were not supposed to eat from. One tree was about differences, and one tree was about forever. If you ate from the tree about differences, you would know about differences. And if you ate from the tree about forever, you would live forever. In this garden, there was also a serpent who was more clever than any of the other creatures. The serpent convinced the humans that they should taste the fruit from the tree about differences. The fruit looked tasty, and so the humans decided they would like to try it. When the humans ate the fruit, all of a sudden they recognized the differences between themselves and God. This scared the humans, and so they hid from God. But God called to them and asked them why they hid. The humans did not know how to be with God anymore. And because the humans ate of the tree of differences, they were not allowed to stay in the garden anymore. But God would not leave them alone. God would go with them as they journeyed out into the world and away from the garden. And God gave them again the command and the blessing to be fruitful and multiply. Life might be more difficult outside of the garden, but God promised to be with them and help them be the best humans they could be. Now, sometime later, two humans named Adam and Eve had two sons, and their names were Cain and Abel. Cain grew up to be a farmer. He took care of the soil, planted seeds, and grew all kinds of food to eat. Abel grew up to be a shepherd. He raised, fed, and cared for his sheep, and when large animals came by, he protected them. Even though humans now saw the difference between people and God, they still tried to seek God and to honor God by giving sacrifices from what they produced. For Cain, this meant offering God part of his harvest, fruits, grains, vegetables, and things like that. For Abel, this meant offering God one of his best lambs. God was very happy with the sacrifice that Abel offered, but was not pleased with the one that Cain gave. We don't really know why, but somehow they were different. Cain was very upset that his sacrifice was not acceptable to God. He became jealous and angry. Cain did not like that there was a difference between his offering and his brother. He thought that meant that God liked Abel more than God liked Cain. And so the difference that Cain noticed between himself and his brother clouded how he saw his brother. He no longer saw in Abel the image of God, but instead saw another human that he had to compete with and that he had to be better than. God spoke to Cain and warned him that his jealousy and anger were making it difficult for Cain to see God's image in his brother. Cain did not need to let his anger and jealousy blind him. Instead, he could choose to love Abel. But Cain had so much anger and jealousy in him that he could no longer love Abel. One day, he asked Abel to follow him out into the field, and then he killed his brother. God knew what Cain had done and called out to him, asking where his brother was. Cain asked in return, "Am I my brother's keeper?" And he told God that he did not know where Abel was. God sent Cain away. He would have to live with the consequences of his actions. Not only did he lose his brother, but he lost his family, his mother and father, and the land he relied on to grow food. He would be broken from all that he had known. Cain would have to wander the land and would never find a place to settle down again. But God still promised to go with Cain so that Cain would not be alone in the world.